Excellencies, distinguished speakers, honorable participants, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, according to your time zone. My name is Tageldin Hamad. I am the Vice President of Universal Peace Federation. I have, I think, my bio on the chat if you would like to know more, but let me say thank you. Thank you for joining us in this program to celebrate the UN International Day of Parents 2023, organized by the Universal Peace Federation International and co-sponsored by the mission of Oman to the United Nations and His Excellency Ambassador Mohamed Hassan. The theme title is Mothers and Fathers, essential for societal stability and development. UPF, an NGO in a general consultative status with the United Nations, was instrumental in establishing this day by submitting a proposal in 2012 to the President of UN General Assembly, His Excellency Nasser Abdulaziz al-Nasser. On the same year, Resolution 8/66/659 was adopted by the UN General Assembly, establishing June 1st as UN International Day of Parents. Since then, UPF chapters worldwide celebrated this day in partnership with stakeholders, organizing events, entertainments, conferences, educational seminars, and webinars. This year, we were hoping actually to organize an event at the United Nations headquarters, as we have done many times in the past. However, we got exceptionally busy in the month of May organizing another larger UPF event in Korea called Peace Summit 2023 to discuss the urgent crisis challenging world peace these days. About 700 participants from 68 countries offer suggestions based on UPF ideals of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universal values. This Zoom program is a token of our appreciation to parents. Thanks to our speaker who positively respond to our invitation to share their knowledge, insight, although we gave them very little time to prepare. I am looking forward to be enriched by their insights. Let me now introduce our co-sponsor, His Excellency, Dr. Mohamed Al-Hassan, Permanent Representative of Oman to the United Nations. I have the honor to know him in the 90s. Please don't start counting our ages. At that time, he was a diplomat working at the mission of Oman to the UN. Since then, he carried out many important responsibilities in his home country and abroad. Few of these responsibilities are acting Undersecretary for Diplomatic Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Oman, Chief of Staff and Head of the Minister's Department, Head of the Office of Political Analysis, Ambassador to Russia Federation, Director of the Ministers, Cabinet and Director of Political Affairs. Ambassador Al-Hassan holds a PhD in economics from Moscow State University, a master's degree in international relations from St. John's University, bachelor's degree in political science from University of Washington, Seattle. Most relevant now, he's married and proud father of 2 daughters. Mr. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on this Global Parent Day, we gather here to celebrate and honor the invaluable role of parents worldwide. On behalf of the permanent mission of the Sultanate of Oman to the United Nations, allow me to extend warm greeting and sincere appreciation to the organizers of this event. With the same token of appreciation and gratitude, I cannot remiss the opportunity to pay a special tribute to parents around the world for their role in their societies. Family, for us in the Sultanate of Oman, remains the cornerstone for a better society and for good parenting in an integral part of this, which is an integral part of this foundation. Our meeting today is to celebrate good parenting, with parents serving as the primary nurturers and guardians of their children, responsible for their holistic development. Mothers and fathers bear the primary responsibility in optimizing human development, serving as the first and most influential socializing agents in a child's life, even before children enter the formal education system or engage with the rest of the society. Parents hold a crucial role for ensuring the children's development, not only academically, but at all levels, including emotionally, socially, morally, and spiritually. This holistic approach to education nurtures children's character, resilience, empathy, and cultural understanding, thus preparing them to be responsible citizens and good humans in a diverse and interconnected world. Moreover, parents in the Middle East understand that education encompasses more than academic achievements. They emphasize the emotional, cultural, and social well-being of their children, fostering a sense of belonging, identity, and values that contribute to the well-being of any society and towards future generations. The aim is to raise compassionate, socially conscious individuals who can contribute positively to their communities and promote peace and understanding. On this Global Parent Day, let us recognize and honor the rights and responsibilities of parents in educating children. Let us acknowledge the vital roles of mothers and fathers in optimizing human development through the transmission of values, morals, and good principles. Together, let us continue to prioritize the holistic development of our children, ensuring their academic, emotional, cultural, and social growth, for they are the foundation of a brighter and prosperous future. I thank you.
Your Excellency, on behalf of the chairman of UPF International, Dr. Charles Yang, and myself, thank you for your important speech with deep appreciation to your country's continued support for the family as a cornerstone for better society and parents as primary nurturers and guardians of their children, responsible for their holistic development. Thank you, sir. Now let me turn the stewardship of this program to Mrs. Lynn Walsh, who took the largest portion of responsibility to put this program together. But before that, actually, I called the Office of the Secretary General, because usually they issue a statement for Parents' Day. This year they didn't, for strange reason. They didn't do that. But what I did actually, as you know, these days, there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence. So I sought to try to find what the machine is saying about parents. And here what I found. Good. Mothers and fathers are both essential for societal stability and flourishing. Their unique contributions, nurturance, and guidance shape the next generation and lay the groundwork for a prosperous and harmonious society. Recognizing the significance of both parents and fostering an environment that value their roles is crucial for the well-being and development of individuals and for building a stronger and brighter future for all. Unquote. That's what the machine said. I leave it to you to decide if that's right or wrong. Lynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Taj. This is an event that I really am so proud of and glad to pull together. I'm glad that artificial intelligence understands how essential parenting is. I have a little bit more confidence in artificial intelligence if that is true. So let's make sure they hold on to that principle. Okay, I'm really excited to have these two speakers. So I have the pleasure of introducing Nicholeen Peck. She's written many books, 11 books on parenting and teaching. I love this, teaching children adult skills. I love that. In 2009, she starred on the BBC program, The World's Strictest Parents. So this is going to be interesting. She has a popular YouTube channel called Teaching Self-Government and does the Teaching Self-Government broadcast with her daughter, Paige. Nicholeen is president of the World Organization for Women, an organization I really like. She's the founder and CEO of Teaching Self-Government. She was nominated for a Young Mother of the Year for all her work as a therapeutic treatment care foster parent for troubled teens, which is so interesting, and for raising her own children. Nicholeen has been happily married to her husband, Spencer, for 30 years. So Nicholeen, I am so happy to give you the floor.
Thank you, Lynn. I am really honored to be here. I'm going to go ahead and pull up a presentation for everybody to see. And while I'm doing that, I just have to mention that my son-in-law said, Nicholeen, let's look up, well, I mean, he said, Mom, let's look up and see what AI says about you, right? What artificial intelligence says about you. So I think, I don't know if it was something called Chat CPT, something like this. Okay, he looks up on, me, and he said, this is what they say about you. And it nailed it pretty good, but it threw in another book in there. It said that I wrote a book called I Don't Care Whatever, and I did not write a book called that. So I don't know where that came from. In fact, I definitely would not advocate for that statement, since I'm all about not having children have attitude problems with their parents. Anyway, so it's doing okay. It's doing okay, but I'm a little skeptical since it gave me credit for something I didn't do. All right, so today I am talking about the parents' role in shaping the character of their children, and I hope that you all know that it is a very vital role that parents have in the character development of their children. In fact, I'm guessing that that's one of the main reasons that this wonderful global day of parents was promoted and established so that we could make sure, starting back in, I think it was 2012, to make sure that we keep parents in the forefront, that we help people understand the power that parents really have. So I just want to quickly here show you some things that have been part of my work. So I travel all over the world teaching about parenting. And back in 2015, the KCCB, which is the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, they noticed that there were problems in their society. Some things that they felt like were getting out of control, actually. And so they prayed about it. They said, okay, we've got rape, we've got murder, we've got all of these things going on, and what do we do about that? And so then they came up with the conclusion, if we can fix the parenting, we can fix the problems in our society long term. And I thought, that's genius. I mean, of course, it makes sense. It's logical. The dots connect on that, you know? And I wondered, how come other countries are not coming up with this same conclusion? And I love that Oman, the country of Oman, is also part of this because they're seeing those same dots, I'm sure, that are being connected together. Anyway, so they contacted the World Congress of Families and said, hey, we want to really fix some of these first world problems that are hitting our third world country right now. And what do we do? And they said, you know, you need Nicholeen Peck. So they invited me to come over and to train people. And you see me here with the bishop that was in charge of this program and with some other families. But I've got to tell you, once I got there and started doing these trainings, there was one woman who said, you know, I was really skeptical about this, but because nothing good ever comes from America. That's what she said. America's always destroying the things that we're working toward. And it made me feel sad because I thought, I know exactly what she's talking about. Because there's a lot of times that I'm actually ashamed of, you know, some of the things that America is doing to families. But she then was so grateful for the teaching. I came back a few years later to check on the program and all the people that I had trained to teach what I teach within some different faiths there. And they held another event. And this woman stood up and she said, thank you, Nicholeen. Before I took your training, I was afraid of losing my children to all the Western ways, you know. And then she says, but now we have changed. We know who we are, and there is no more war. She described what was going on in her family as war. And truthfully, if there is war in the homes, then there is war in society. So she was spot on with that. Okay, trying to get, there we go. All right. So another just example of what a family can do if they know who they are. Now, not only can they get rid of war within their own homes, but they can actually make an international impact. So in 2009, I was contacted by the BBC over in the UK and asked to be on a program called The World's Strictest Parents, as Lynn mentioned in my introduction there. And I did not want to be in this program because to me, I thought strict meant a person who was ornery, who was angry, who was controlling. And then a friend of mine said, you know, Nicholeen, you are actually the strictest parent I know. You should look up the word. It doesn't mean what you think. And so I looked up the word strict, and it said that it meant a person who governs themselves by a certain set of principles, which means basically your principles and your practice match each other. And that is something that a lot of parents are struggling with. They don't know sometimes what their principles should be in parenting because we've lost some of those things, but then also they're not sure how to handle the problems and still match their principles. Well, I'd worked a long time on that, bringing in troubled teens. And so anyway, in the end, I ended up saying that I would do this program. They brought 2 troubled teens to our home. You can see them there. They stayed for 8 days. And if you want to see this program, you can go to teachingselfgovernment.com and you can click the blog tab, and there's a video blog, and it should be one of the top videos that comes up there if you want to see that. But I want to just tell you something. These 2 teens came to our house. They were ready for a fight. They wanted to show the world how strong they were. And so they immediately started rebelling, and trying to push any button that they could. But the thing is we're very confident in our parenting. We've brought in the most difficult children that our state has to offer. And we always were able to keep a spirit of love and calmness there with those children. So we weren't worried about whatever these children could dish out to us. And so anyway, they had tantrums for a couple of days. They ran away 5 times in 2 days, but where I live, it's kind of rural. There's really nowhere to go. So they just kept coming back. Plus, they had a camera crew following them every time. So there was that. It's not like we were really going to lose them. Anyway, and so, but they came back, and then finally they got calm. And I asked Hannah, after she got calm, so 2 days of tantrums, and then they were calm, and then they were just bonded in with our family, and they were loving our family. And I asked Hannah, I said, Hannah, for 2 days you were out of control, and now suddenly you're just so happy. What happened? And she said, well, at my house, if I yell, I get my way, or at least somebody yells back. But here it didn't work because you were so calm. So we just chose to be calm too. Now, this tells you the power that a parent has, actually. Number one, it also tells you when a person is angry and you feed into it and you power struggle with them, do they get something out of it? The answer is yes. They feel like they are powerful, when in reality, they are not, and they know it. And what they're hoping for is that stopping point. And because I wouldn't engage with them, but still held the line and did the good parenting, calm thing with them, finally they were like, this isn't working. And they just accepted the boundary and they were happy about it. In fact, by the end of the program, if you see the program, you'll see them crying. And what you don't see is right before this moment of them crying, they actually came to me and my husband and they said, please don't make us go. We feel so safe here. Don't make us go. No one will understand why we don't want to live the way that we did before. They were living party lifestyles, druggies, doing all kinds of things they shouldn't do, prostituting, and why we don't want to say the words that we used to say because they have very, very foul mouths. Anyway, and they said, so please don't make us go. And sadly, we had to let them go. And they needed to go back to their parents. But do you know what they did? Is they went back to their parents and they actually finished or fixed their relationships, which was amazing. In fact, when they got back, you see at the end of the program, they interview James and they say, so James, what is all this about, do you think? Like, if you're going to remember something, what's the biggest impact on you? And he's standing there in his home back in Leicester in England, and he said, family. It's all about family. And he gained this by bonding with us. He didn't have a great bond with his mom. She had mental health issues, some other things going on. He had no attachment to his dad. But when he came to our home and we both attached to him, mother and father, he was changed. He did not want to leave because he felt something he had never felt before. He did not know that it was even possible. So what did we teach James and Hannah, who came to our house? We taught them communication skills. We taught them problem-solving skills. Those are presentations for another day, or if we have spare time or something, because I could go into that stuff at length. But in this presentation, I'd like to touch on some of the things that we taught them, these other 3 things, which was we taught them who they were. We taught them their role, their value, their identity. We taught them what a family is, what it's supposed to be. Now, they had families, but their families were dysfunctional. So they didn't understand what a family was and the power that a family could have. And so we taught them that, and we taught them what matters most. And what matters most actually is that bond to family, because it lays the foundation for absolutely everything else. So life begins and ends with family as the focus. But in reality, everything we do is a direct result of family. Every decision that we make, every way that we spend our time, whether we go to the office or we take the office home, whether we buy certain foods or we don't buy other certain foods, the ways that we spend our entertainment time, all of these things give a message about what we think about the importance of family, the importance of the parent-child bond, and the impact that we think that that bond is supposed to have upon those people that are in that home. So family is where we find out who we are and why we matter. It gives us our very identity. It gives us our core, our foundation for everything. So the world is at war against family. I don't know if you've noticed this, but we definitely see that in Hollywood, in movies. So it used to be that in TV and in movies, the nuclear family was the center of everything, right? There was Leave It to Beaver, his family. There was the Beverly Hillbillies. It was all about their family. Eight is Enough. It was about their family. The Brady Bunch. It was about a family. So all and Bewitched. All of these old programs back that I remember that were old even when I was young, but these older programs, they were all about family. And then this shift happened, and this shift that said, you know what? That's not what everybody has anymore, and so we can't talk about that anymore. In fact, there's a book written by an academic. Her name's Carol Swain. She's a professor, and it's called Black Eye for America. And in there, she highlights the Smithsonian Institute for African American Culture or something like that. And in there, it talks about the things that they reject. And one of the key things that they reject, that they say society must reject, is two-parent families. That is actually a statement that we should have to reject two-parent families. That's horrific, because even if somebody has been through a divorce or a spouse has passed on or something has not worked out so that there can be mother and father in the home, even if those parents know that the ideal is not what they have, and they know that they are hoping to find a way to fill in that gap. They know, and they're hoping that their children end up with the ideal. They don't want them to have anything less. So let's talk about what children are being taught. Children are being taught war. They are being taught to war against their parents. They are encouraged to disrespect their parents. I actually met a young woman. She was in her early 20s a few years back. She introduced herself to me and said, "Hi, my name's Mary." And then she said to me, almost knowing that I was like a parenting person, she said, "You should know I have no respect for parental authority." And I thought to myself, what? Who introduces themselves that way? That's your power card? You meet a new person and you immediately declare war against parental authority? Is that really what our young people are learning right now? They are. And so they're losing their role. This is how we know that they don't know who they are. They don't know who anybody else is. They just know that they want power. And if anybody else has any sign of power, they've got to take it down. So it's a very a militant attitude. When the roles in the family are lost, we also lose our family, the value of family, of identity, of purpose, of community, of unity, of national strength, and of freedom in general, because all of those things are rooted within that parent-child relationship with husband or with mother and father and with their children. So roles are different than relationships. Roles are self-evident, okay? You can't make them up. You can't say, "I'm a mother," when you're not a mother. So it is self-evident. I have children that I'm a mother. I am married, so it's self-evident that I am wife. I am a spouse. Okay. My children, they are daughter and son. That's self-evident. There's nothing they can do about that. They can try to say it's not true. They can try to pull away from family and not act like it, but it's always there. So our roles are based in the things we can't change, try as we might. Just as we desire, we cannot change them. They are self-evident parts of who we are. And the strong person, like Buddha says, he says, the purpose in life is to find your purpose in life and then live it. Well, that's what a wise person does, is they say, what are the self-evident things about me? And then I'm going to live them. Now, responsibilities are very different. Anyone can, do the gardening. Anyone can cook a meal. Anyone can make a paycheck. But not anyone can be a mother or a father or a daughter. Those things are different. So let's talk really quickly about what the role of mother is. So if I were to ask a 15-year-old girl, what is the role of a 15-year-old daughter? She would look at me and give me a blank stare. And I know because I've done this. They're like, I don't know. They don't even know who they are. They're like, you got me. But if you ask them, what's the role of mother? They kind of know. They say, well, she's there for us. She always cares for us. She does things for us. She loves us. She teaches us things. She nurtures us, they might even say. They know what mother does because they've felt it their whole life. Even if they've pushed against it, they rely upon it. Mother is the heart and hearthstone of the family. And when children are young, she guides the hearts of those children. She leads them toward what is going to be the most important in their life. This is the power that mother has. And then if I were to ask 15-year-old daughter, what is the role of father? Then she would say, well, he's a provider, he's a protector. Sometimes children say he presides in our home. They say things like that, these P words associated with father, this paternal figure that they know. They know he is strong. They know that he does stuff out in the world. They know he connects with them differently than mother. And when they hit about age 12, their hearts start turning toward father and they follow his example. So at first, they will tattletale on father to mother. They'll go to mother and they'll say, Daddy's watching a show that we don't watch, Mom. Daddy said a word that we don't say. They'll go and say those things. But once they hit about age 12 and up, they start going, maybe that's what it means to live a regular life. So if Daddy's on his phone scrolling all the time, they think that's what the meaning of life is. They think that's the point, Daddy has that type of power in their lives. And if father wisely turns them back toward mother during that time, he saves his children. And if mother turns her hearts toward the hearts of the children toward father when they are young, then they get that acceptance and love from their children. You can see at the bottom of this page, it says children get wisdom from their mothers. They get acceptance from their fathers. This is powerful. Children raised without fathers oftentimes are struggling to find where they are accepted, where they fit in the world, and they constantly are making bad choices for themselves. So what's the role of 15-year-old daughter? Well, mother and father have roles of teacher. 15-year-old daughter, if she's an oldest child, she's an exemplar. But if she's just child and there's other siblings, she's a learner. Every child is a learner. That's one of their main roles that they have. So what a wise family doesn't just discuss the roles of the people, but they also discuss the roles of the stuff. And if you can remember this might be one of your big takeaways from what I'm sharing here today. And that is that we absolutely have all of this other stuff that we have to give roles to. And if we don't deliberately do it, it can take over the roles of the people. So there's the roles of the devices, the roles of the media, the entertainment, the social media, the toys, the money or the work, the friends, the social, the church, the food, the exercise, the hobbies. It could go on and on. All of these things take on active moments in our life. If they can take any of our time, we have to declare what their role is in our life then. We have to. Because if not, they can take over our role. They can supplant us. And you see these pictures of these families here. They're all by each other. And they're making faces. They're even smiling. They're enjoying things. But they're not enjoying each other. They're not enjoying the family. It's not about the people that it's around them. It's not about what they get from each other and those basic needs that are met from each other. Instead, they are getting needs met from these other things. In this case, devices, entertainment, social media, and so forth. And these things have to be given a role. In our family, I taught my children that devices are tools, not toys. They are tools, not toys. These things can control us, I would say, if we do not have the power to control them. And I'm all about teaching self-government. That's a principle that's behind everything that I teach. It's something that I live by. And when a person is self-governing, that means they understand the cause and effect of any given situation and possess a knowledge of their own behaviors so that they can control them. That means they make decisions for themselves. They analyze themselves and they say, is this the best version of me? And then they make a change for that. And the only way to help our children actually get to a place where they can make that change is for them to recognize the roles of the people are the most important. So it's really important that we don't attempt to fix the family by looking through the lens of the world. That's going to hurt us. And when we're looking on our devices, that's what people are doing. They're going to YouTube to fix their family. And hopefully they find the Teaching Self-Government YouTube channel and the Teaching Self-Government podcast, because I'm going to point them back toward the family. But instead, we need to fix the world by looking through the lens of the family. It's the lens of the family, that parent lens teaches the child how to see the world for the rest of their lives. That's the parent lens. It gives them their identity. It forms them. The character of a child will transform the future regardless of what the parent does. If the parent has a bad bond, that character of the child will transform the future, regardless. So wise parents choose to deliberately focus on positive character formation. Okay, they help the child understand their roles. When I was a small child, my parents taught me one of my first songs. It was a little religious song called I Am a Child of God. And it went like this: I am a child of God, and he has sent me here, has given me a loving home with parents kind and dear. Lead me, guide me, walk beside me, help me find the way. Teach me all that I must do to live with him someday. Look what they taught me for one of my first lessons. They taught me I was a child of God and I was their child. They taught me who they were and what they were supposed to do in my life. I taught the same song to my children. My children are now teaching the same song to their children, to my grandchildren. Parents have a sacred duty to mold children. We literally get to script their hearts and their minds. That is what parents get to do. Children will be taught to reject the words of parents, and they will be taught to not have natural affection toward their parents. That's what society is trying to teach. And if you're a biblical person, there's a warning about that. And children will continue to be stolen from their parents right under their noses, even though the parents are paying for things that the children need. The children are stolen. They're being exploited for money and control. But if the parents, the mother and the father, take their roles seriously, and the role of the child as a learner seriously, they won't let the child just learn from anyone. The desire to connect to parents runs deep in a child. The children will keep coming back to it. So I raised very troubled children. I did therapeutic treatment care for a lot of years for troubled teens. And you know what? Those troubled teens, even though they were abused and they were raised by drug addicts lots of times, they would say, don't talk bad about my mom. Don't talk bad about my dad. They loved them. So they will always come back to that bond because it runs deep. Now, here's some resources for you. There's a calm parenting toolkit. That's all I've got to share for you today, Lynn. And hopefully that gives people something that they can launch off of. The Simple Safe Guide is a sexual abuse prevention guide. Before They Connect is all about media and technology. Those are on the Worldwide Organization for Women.org website. The other things, the Roles book, which is a book that I've written all about roles, and Parenting at House United, those are with other resources on the teachingselfgovernment.com website. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Amazing content. You've lived it, you've systemized what works with all your experience. I love what you say, look at the world through the lens of the family, because the parent-child relationship is the unique anchor for spiritual, moral, emotional development. There's none other. And if this is not healthy, all falls apart. And thank you so much for developing this. So many tools. I'm sure we will get your information out there on the chat, or anyone who asks for it will certainly share it. And I just want to say, many parents are well-meaning, but they don't have the skills. Just like marriage, many have, they get married, they want to stay married, but they don't have the skills. So, certainly there's no blame out there for single parents or divorced parents. We really need to acknowledge we don't know enough. We need the skills. We need to understand the purpose of parenting and how to make it succeed. So thank you so much, Nicholeen.
My pleasure. I always say people don't know what they don't know. And that's where a lot of parents find themselves right now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. So I have the pleasure now to introduce Terry Schilling, who is a president of the American Principles Project, who I've been aware of him and his project for many years, and really doing terrific work. Since he's taken the reins of American Principles Project, he's overseen a tremendous growth in making the APP into a premier national organization defending family in the political area. So we learn the practical nitty-gritty at parents. Now we want to look at the politics involved in strengthening family and parents' role. In 2021, he founded APP's Big Family Initiative, which aims to make the family into the most powerful special interest group in Washington, D.C. I really love that. And he has directed numerous election efforts, including campaigns to defend women's sports, and particularly important for today, protecting parental rights in education. Terry's worked with many pro-family political leaders, such as Senator Sam Brownback, who we know pretty well, and Representative Chris Smith. And most important, he and his wife, Katie, are proud parents of 6 wonderful children. So Terry, we are glad you're here, and I give you the floor.
Well, thank you so much, Lynn. And I really wish we could work more often together. We're just both so busy, but you're a role model and a mentor to me, and I'm just so honored to be here. I have been working on making the family, as Lynn said, the most powerful and important special interest group in the country. And we approach the family in a unconventional way. In kind of a cynical way, right? DC and basically every capital in the world is full of special interest groups. There's big pharma, big oil, big tobacco. There's everyone, even clowns. I bet you guys didn't know this, but even clowns have their own special interest group. It's called the National Balloon Society. And so we wanted to form the big family as like a double entendre, right? We want people getting married and having bigger families, having more children. But we also want the family to be feared. We want politicians to be more afraid of upsetting us and overturning the apple cart for the family than they are with any other special interest group. And so that's kind of how we approach things. But I've been traveling the country for the past couple of years, and I've been speaking about, and this sounds, I mean, probably not to this crew, but to a lot of people, it sounds a bit hysterical. But I talk about the abolition of the family in America. And it's very real. We are very much through this process. The family still remains. I mean, there's still some semblance of an institution that the family has here in America. But for the most part, marriage doesn't mean anything legally anyway. We are seeing an entire generation of kids that are choosing not to get married or to put off marriage as long as possible. And even when they do get married, they don't have children. And I've heard this time and again, it's actually not that kids are too expensive. That's a lot of times an afterthought. The thing that I'm finding from talking to people is that they view children as a hassle. And they view the world as being overpopulated. My generation doesn't really value the importance of family formation or having children. And so when I was preparing my remarks today, I wanted to kind of give like a 30,000-foot view of what's going on in education and just like what I've learned. Because this essentially, history is full of it's full of experiments that, and innovations that have led to the betterment of humanity. But it's also full of really terrible things and, unspeakable human atrocities and destruction. And one of the most disastrous experiments in human history has been the attempts to subvert and destroy the natural role that parents play in the direction and upbringing of their children. And a lot of people are being fooled by this. At the outset of these efforts to eliminate parental authority and responsibility over their children, these efforts seem kind of altruistic and compassionate. We hear our opponents say, it takes a village, and children and parents need all the help that we can give them. And Joe Biden recently just said that children don't belong just to their parents; they belong to all of us. And then most recently in 2021 in Virginia, Terry McAuliffe told voters here that parents shouldn't be telling schools what to teach. This is something very new. But these sentiments, while they seem altruistic, they turn into disaster very quickly, because when everyone's responsible for children, no one ends up taking responsibility for children. And it's more than just an absurd notion to expect individuals to take more responsibility or to show compassion and love, or to be more generous to complete strangers than to their own flesh and blood that were created through a miraculous act of love. It's absurd. But that is the world in which many nations, particularly Western nations, are creating. It's a world where each of us has social obligations that we have to pay for and provide education and shelter and nourishment and clothing and healthcare of complete strangers that we most likely will never even meet or even interact with. But they also argue at the same time that we have no obligation, that parents have no obligation to provide even a basic 9 months in the womb to their own flesh and blood for any excuse or no excuse at all in many cases. The primary focus of my remarks today is not about abortion. It's about the primary role that parents must play in the direction of the education of their children. It's important to note, though, while I don't want to focus this a lot on abortion, I do want to point out that many of the voices that are calling for greater societal engagement with children, they're the same folks that believe that there is nothing wrong with discarding the most precious and vulnerable and innocent human beings, the preborn. It's in my view, and I think a lot of yours, it's immoral to waste any resources in this world, especially when there are so many people that not only would put those resources to good use, but when there are so many people that would actually cherish those resources and do almost anything to attain them. And our children are way more valuable than food, oil, gold, or even diamonds. Our children are infinitely valuable, and they hold infinite potential for making our world a better place. Which is why I think it's really important that we need to start working to reform all of our institutions from Main Street all the way to the United Nations to uphold the rights and duties of parents to direct the upbringing of their children. Education in America has kind of been lost. It's much more than just making people literate, right? Education is truly a holistic process that should properly form the next generation in terms of morality, philosophy, critical thinking, politics, and also our social responsibility. And because the purpose of education is deeper than just simple goals of reading and doing math, parents in reality are the only ones that are equipped to make these decisions for their children. And I would say I'd go even further, that on top of that, parents are the only ones with the natural God-given right to make these decisions pertaining to their children. In America, many teachers in the Western world, they're in their mid to late 20s, right? The vast majority of them are unmarried, and even fewer of them have children of their own. So in my mind, are we to believe that a college certificate carries more credibility than actually having children of your own? Are we to believe that a mid-20-something who doesn't even love children enough to have children of their own has more love or investment in those children than their own parents, right? That these mid-20-somethings have more at stake in the successful education of our children than we do as parents. I think it's laughable. It's preposterous. But just as parents are responsible for taking care of children in their most vulnerable and formational years, our children in turn are responsible for returning that love and care to us as we become vulnerable, as we get older and enter the late stages of our lives. I had I would say the honor. My father passed away about 2 years ago, and he was 57. He had a aggressive form of cancer, but I actually would say that I had the honor of returning that favor to him, of taking care of him in his final days. And I'm the oldest of 10 kids, and he died surrounded by all 10 of us, right? And that's one of the blessings. And death is always really sad, and it's tragic. It was never meant to be. But family, had he not had a family, had he not had been open to life and valued family formation, having kids, he would have died alone, right? He was someone that struggled with alcoholism and drug addiction, actually, in a very serious way. And he actually chose to get clean when my mom was pregnant with her fourth child because she was going to leave him. And so, people are missing out on this. There are going to be countless amounts of people that, die the saddest deaths. They die alone. And I think that we would be better off as a society if we work to change that and encourage more family formation, which is a large part why we do what we do at American Principles Project. But, getting back to the topic, it should come as no shock that nations like the former Soviet Union, which attempted to abolish the family and the role of parents in the upbringing of their children, they suffer not only increased rates of crime and violence and a whole host of other social plagues, but the elderly were regularly euthanized and discarded when their value to society was no longer present, to the central planners that were in charge of things. When parents don't have responsibility over the people that they brought into the world, then those children won't have responsibilities for the ones who brought them into the world either. And so I guess I ask again, how can we expect individuals to care for or provide for strangers whom they will never meet, will never, take care of them or interact with them? How can we expect them to do that for strangers when they won't even care for their own flesh and blood, your ancestry? And that's something that Nicholeen pointed out, that family is where you derive your purpose. It's where you get your identity from. And I think that that's part of what America's going through today, is the fact that so many people have broken families. They have mixed families, and you have to make the best of the situation you're given. But we have so many people in this country that are searching for identities in all the wrong places, in their gender, in their race, in their sexual orientation, and it's empty. And there's no happiness. There's no fulfillment there. But I do want to point out that when it comes to education, the people that are actually pushing to remove parents from all this, many of the world leaders and education bureaucrats today that are doing all of this, they don't even have children themselves. So my question is, what is their interest in controlling the education of our children? I think who comes to mind to a lot of us is, Bill Gates. And I'm sure that Bill Gates is a very nice man. And I'm sure that he has the best of intentions, but I can't help but question the motives of a billionaire who has no children of his own, who wants to shape the minds and lives of billions of other people's kids. It could be political or profit driven. It could even be of the best intentions. But I think the issue there is that many of us know that, we all know that many roads, we know where these roads take us, right? When roads are paved with good intentions, many of them lead us straight to hell, and they cause a lot of damage and heartache. But I think that people without their own children should not have a say over the education of other people's children, right? I'm fine with, if you have experience with children and you have some wisdom that you've gained, that's one thing. But it's a whole other thing that we have a bunch of childless people that don't even value their own children enough to have them, that are trying to control and subvert our authority and our control over what our kids can say and learn and do. But what do these childless people, what expertise do they offer? What could you possibly learn from a book or even decades of lectures from the best experts about children that would give you more wisdom and knowledge than the people who are actually doing the job of parenting every single day? right? That are dedicating their lives to their children. But the policies and, the solutions from these childless experts aren't just ineffective, they're destructive. And they're destructive because they all operate from a central premise that's entirely incorrect. And that premise is that all children are generally the same and can be molded to fit whatever form the experts in power seek. These solutions are almost always, if you notice there's a pattern, they're almost always a one-size-fits-all approach. And it's never worked in the decades that we began implementing these solutions. In America, in fact, these solutions have led to more than 60% of fourth graders in the National Assessment of Educational Progress. It's the America's report card. 60% of fourth graders can't read at grade level, right? They can't do math at their own grade level. And that's because over the last few decades, we've centralized our education system, and we've tried to force this uniformity of education policy in America. And as their plans have continued to fail, the same experts are in charge, and they're still operating from the same premise. And we shouldn't be shocked that these plans are continuing to fail because they're operating from that false and incorrect central premise that all children are generally the same and can be molded to whatever they want. This premise is an obvious error to anyone with more than one child, right? Parents learn very quickly that while each of our children may have some similarities between them, each of our children is entirely unique in their own right. Right? Not only do I have more than one child, I have 6 children, as Lynn said, and I'm reminded of how different each child is every single day. Right? They vary in interests, in skills, in personalities, in sense of humor, strength, determination, resolve, passion. My son Max, who's 6, he's definitely my most passionate one. He starts a lot of fights in the family, and it's entertaining a lot of times. Sometimes it gets a little bad, but you name the defining attribute, and each one of our kids is in their own and unique. They're their own and unique, beautiful person, right? But while each kid has different needs in terms of education, there are some central and universal principles that should guide us in our policy development when it comes to education. Among them, I've come up with at least 4. There are probably more, but these were the ones that I really wanted to hit on today, and it's not in any particular order at all. The first principle is that parents have a natural right to direct the education and upbringing of their children. They have every right to seek assistance from their community or the state, but this is at their discretion, right? The parents are in the driver's seat. The second principle is that each child is unique and has different educational needs, and each should be free to seek careers that are in line with human dignity and flourishing, right? Like, Nicholeen talked about this in the song that she sung. Like, we're all here for a purpose, and we all have different purposes. And so when you have human beings and central planners in the way, trying to change what God put us on this earth to do and control that, you end up having disasters and very unhappy people at a minimum. Thirdly, is the principle that the innocence of children should be protected from nefarious forces that seek to force anti-human worldviews. These worldviews are often pertaining to race, sexuality, and even gender. It's very important that we protect our children and their innocence. The fourth principle, though, is that those that seek to undermine parental authority over their children should not be trusted, let alone they should not have a seat at the table for education policy development. These are just, these are just some of the principles that I think should be considered when developing education policies, not just in the United States, but also globally. I'm going to kind of wrap things up, but, the family is the starting point for all of humanity. Human beings come into this world through the act of love between their mother and their father. The family is so obviously, important, and it's the basic unit of society that when you say it, people roll their eyes when they hear it, right? And it really hasn't even been questioned until relatively recently. Parents are not only the only ones with the natural right to direct the education of their children, they really are the only ones that are properly equipped to direct the education of their children. And so with that, Lynn, I will turn it back to you, and hopefully we can have a really interesting discussion with me and take some good questions.
Excellent, Terry. Boy, you covered so much. Yeah, what an unbelievable situation that the people with power teaching are the ones that are least connected to the unique value of children. And to think that they're all the same and can be shoved around mentally by education that where parents are not involved would be successful. I mean, children, if they're treated like we're all the same, then of course they're having no sense of who they are. And you can see why people, young people are searching for identity and, as you said, all the wrong places, where it really comes from that core kind of spiritual, emotional grounding of the parent-child relationship. So excellent points. I have one question for Nicholeen. I have so many questions. I'd love to have you speak for 5 more hours. You mentioned kind of the husband, mothers and fathers kind of bring out different points. I wonder if you could talk about that more, because as much as, again, I said, single parents are out there doing a heroic job. We need to support them. We need to help them do their job better, but also hopefully have young people choose a mate that will be committed to be a parent. So we need marriage education, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, there is a lack of sense of why we need mothers and fathers, because they are different. They bring different gifts and traits. So I wonder if you could talk about that more.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. In fact, for sure, I didn't want to give the impression at all that I am, not supportive of single parents. There are so many situations that are just unique to every single family, right? But there is something to be said about the order of how a person gets here. And I do believe that that order tells us a lot of things. It tells us that the ideal situation is that every person has a committed mother and a committed father. Now, of course, we all have our choice. We have free will, right? And so that means that some people choose not to be committed, or something else happens and it gets in the way. But I think even if a mother can't be a mother and a father because she really can't, she can try to fill in some gaps and find other people to help fill in some gaps. Even if it is important to recognize the power that you do have, right? That each mother has and that each father has. So as I mentioned before, and I think this one's really crucial to start this little bit with, but that children get wisdom from their mothers. So whether mother feels that she is wise or not, the children go to her for wisdom. Okay, so they think mother knows everything because she's the one that feeds them, that protects them, that cares for them when they're so tiny and helpless, and they have developed this dependency. They're used to relying upon her for every bit of information. She taught them how to eat. She taught them how to get dressed. She taught them all of the things that help protect them and give them the basic building blocks of being a person, right? That's what mother does. So in the child's eyes, mother is wise. Now that's, going on to what Terry was saying, then we absolutely have to honor that wisdom, because no matter if you declare mother is not wise, to the child, that's what they're looking for. Okay, that's what they're getting from mother, which is huge. And mother also gives a lot of that moral foundation. So women, generally speaking, are the moral authorities in society. Now, that doesn't mean that men cannot be moral and cannot take moral stances and everything else. It doesn't mean that. But basically what I mean by that is whatever a woman will put up with is what will become the norm. Okay? And as our society degrades more and more, we see that women are obviously putting up with more and more mistreatment of their sex and of their children. So women do a protection, men also do a protection. Women usually protect by sheltering a little bit more their child. Okay, they pull them away from a lot of those things to maintain that moral foundation, because the mothers are usually really keyed into, wait, where's the heart of the child? They have this emotional, intuitive thing where they can feel that heart of the child in a very unique way. And obviously, not all women are the same. I know sometimes in a relationship, a man might be more of the softie and the woman's, the one who's a little bit not as is keyed in, but just by and large, that is usually where the woman finds herself, is seeing how everybody feels and focusing on that and seeing what the needs are. And she can usually ascertain a need before anybody else even brings up the need, which is another reason why she comes across as so wise to her children. So let's talk about father. I said children get acceptance from father. That's big. That's a big thing. When he plays with them, when he talks with them, when he cares about them, they get that feeling of, I'm valuable. So with mother, the child feels like, I've got things to do. I've got things to do. But with father, when he hugs them and asks about their day, they feel like, I'm important. I'm valuable. That's what they get. I'm good enough. They get all of those things from father, from that acceptance and that attention that he pays to them. So if he gets himself home and he focuses some of his time on talking with his children regularly, just talking with them and playing with them can make a child become so much more grounded, because of that male influence. When men are the strongest, the boldest, the fearless, and they will take the time to soften and to ask and to care, that shows right there to a child how important they are. And so then they have that intrinsic value because of that. There are so many things that mother and father give, but I thought maybe going off on those two things would be a good angle to start us on.
Excellent. Great. Yes, I remember my husband and I talking to our son, and I talked about, well, how's your feeling and what are your relationships? And I thought I covered all the bases. Then my husband said, well, what are your objectives? What kind of careers is going to, I said, oh yeah, there's another whole aspect. Thank you. Terry, maybe this is an unfair question, but I'm curious how to empower parents. I love what you said by, having children, it's not economic, it's actually, they see it in terms of hassle. I think partly parents relinquish their responsibility for their children's education because they don't have work, because they don't have time because of work. But there's a priority, which your whole talk is talking about, where it's upside down. I wonder how policy or approach helps empower parents.
That's a great question. It's really, really difficult, right? Because in America, we have two major political parties. The Democrats are the party of centralized government and government planning, and the Republican Party still, for the most part, while it's branded as, like a Christian right political party by the corporate media, in reality, it's a corporate party. They every time they do tax reform, right, they prioritize the tax cuts for corporations, and it's because they also operate from a flawed central premise, which is that business drives an economy, and in reality, families drive the economy. And it's not because they create the consumers of tomorrow. It's because they create and mold and form the future leaders of industry, like the future workers, right? It's parents' job to make sure that their kids are moral, that they don't steal, that they work hard, that they're honest. When people aren't having as many children or are forced into this two-parent trap, that we see so many Americans, it takes 2 incomes to get by today. And that's for so many people. I think though that the first step is to have a group of radicals like myself and a few of my friends who are willing to serve as the insurgents in terms of taking the risk, the pioneers that lead us to the new land. And what we do is we build our lives off of one income. Even if that means we have a cheaper house, or we have to live further out of the city, or we don't get to do as much, of the fun stuff and the glitz and glamour. We don't have cable, or, whatever it is, we start to make the sacrifices and we build our family off of one income. I think that a lot of people start off with 2 incomes. They buy a house and they get approved for a loan and a mortgage off of 2 incomes. And then they're trapped even when they have kids, or they put off having kids. So I think that the first step is to have these insurgents that come in and they say, we value family formation. We want a ton of kids. We want as many kids as God gives us. And if that means we have to sacrifice economically and financially, then we're going to do it. Because we're, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Just very simplistic, right? And then those countercultural revolutionaries will end up serving as a model. And the good thing that families have, that we have as a family movement, that we have going for us, is that the family is a naturally attractive institution. It's a naturally attractive thing that people have a base human desire, right? We want, it's unnatural to not want to have a life partner and a spouse. It's unnatural not to want to bring children into the world and to have more kids. It's artificial. It is pushed through propaganda and the other cultural institutions that we have, academia and the media and Hollywood, and even and in many cases, government policy. And so first, we need the insurgents that just go out there and they're maniacs like me. They just go and have 6 kids and live outside of Washington, D.C. and just figure out how to make it work on one income. But then 2, we have to organize and engage in politics to remove the hurdles and barriers to family formation in government policy. And we have our work cut out for us. And it's in terms of the economy, it's in terms of education policy and quality of education. We have to anything that's standing in the way of parents having kids or directing the upbringing and education of their children. We have to get rid of those things. And then, sorry, I'm blanking. I had one more thing to add to that. The same way that we pass on our religion to our children, the same way that we teach them to love God, the same way that we teach them patriotism and pass on that love of country, we have to do that when it comes to being open to life and to value family formation, right? I think, my parents were radical. They had 10 kids. It was ingrained in us that children are a good thing and there's always room for more. This is family and we'll always make room. But, my great grandmother, so I'm the eldest of an eldest of an eldest. So I was very close to my great grandmother. She was 60 when I was born, and she relentlessly would tell me not to get married until I was 35, to get my college degree. And I think that that's wrong. And I would actually tell her that today I think that that's wrong. I think that college is easier with a spouse. I think that people that have children are more driven. Hungry mouths are a great motivator for dads to provide for their children. That's what's motivated us throughout history, is to provide for our wife and children. And so I just reject the notion that you should put off having children until you're ready. You'll never be married. You'll never have children if that's the case, because you'll never want to sacrifice. And by the way, having children young, we were talking about this a little bit before the call, having children young is the easier way to do it, right? I'm 36 right now. My wife and I just had our 6th baby last year. It's tough. I mean, this latest baby was way tougher than the baby I had when I was 19 or 23 or 27 or 30. Like this this latest baby was our biggest challenge. And it's just because you're older, you don't have the energy you used to. And so those are the three things. Pass this on to your kids just the same way you do patriotism and religion. It's just as important. Remove all the hurdles in government laws and policies that prohibit and inhibit family formation and direction of your kids' upbringing. And then be the radicals, like be the ones that are willing to go out there and take a risk.
We need more radicals like you.
Yes. What a wonderful maniac
one little thing.
insurgent we have. Thank you. I also have to have you back to talk about policy for strengthening healthy family formation. Taj, I understand there's questions on the chat. Do you want to share?
Well, there is no question on the chat, but I have
there is, but
one question I would like to pose if possible.
okay.
So in the East, there is this concept of filial piety. And it seems like it's getting the family together. How do the Western world understand filial piety? And is that a virtue which we could encourage in our children?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the term, Taj.
Filial piety is the love of the children to their parents.
Okay, I think it cut out on my end when you were saying that. Thank you. You know, I actually think that unless you try it, unless you decide to invest something in it, you never know. Especially because the world is teaching everybody to just care about themselves. And so nobody sees that there could be fruits there to care about the children, to turn their hearts toward the children. But we know that when we are part of philanthropic things, I mean, this right here, Universal Peace Federation, this is a very philanthropic thing, right? We know that we're part of this thing, we're doing something good that can benefit somebody else. Well, every moment with a child is something good that you can benefit somebody else. And it's not just them, but it's also the children that come after them. And so I think we have to reframe the mindset about what family is. Family isn't there to serve you. Family is there to serve. And that's the real benefit that you get out of it. Because when you truly love someone, real love is when you give of yourself, you give up for that person. And so you get to actually practice that through duty, through loyalty, through sacrifice, all of those things the parents have to do just to provide for the child and get the child here. But then as they continue to do that, then hopefully they will see those fruits that come back to the self and that come in that increased feeling of love. Everybody's looking for love, but they're looking for it in all the wrong places.
Good. Thank you.
Gary, there is a question on the chat, so you can welcome to answer what Taj said, or I don't know if you can see the question on the chat.
So is this the one
choice.
about the Mitt Romney, the
Yes,
child care scheme?
child care scheme.
What does Terry think? What do I think of some of the child care schemes that are coming forward from some Republican politicians in the U.S., such as Senator Mitt Romney's child tax credit proposal? My preference would be young children spend at least their early years with their mother. Does something like this accomplish the right goals? So I believe that we have endorsed that child tax credit proposal. So I really am interested in what nations like Hungary is doing to encourage family formation. And it's not even, I don't know if it'll actually end up leading to more children being born. And they're starting to see some good results there. But I think that it's more of a matter of justice, right? We should not be valuing capital and business formation in America more than we are valuing family formation. And I'll explain what that means. Businesses in America pay taxes on their net income. Families pay taxes on their gross adjusted income. So the businesses, they look at their profits margins, and if they lost money, they don't pay any taxes. Well, guess what? Families don't really profit every year. And I'd like to see some parity there. I don't look, I think that the problem is that you're talking about politics, and politics is the art of what's possible. And until we have a presidential candidate come forward that articulates this to the American people and attempts to sell it, as Reagan did with supply side economics, which, by the way, supply side economics was very controversial, especially within the Republican Party. I think that it's not going to happen. But I support essentially all efforts to eliminate or reduce the tax burden or economic burden of families. We have to have bigger homes. We have to have a larger mortgage payment. We have to have a bigger car. We have to have a minivan, right? We can't have a sedan. And we buy way more in groceries. And I'm sorry, but it costs way more than the $20,000 tax exemption that we get to take every year. I think that families should pay taxes on their net income, or look at offering the ability for parents and families to, if I'm a corporation and I pay for the health care of my workers, that goes against my tax liability. I don't have to pay tax on that. That's a cost of business. If I buy a building, if I buy a factory and I mortgage it, I get to write that off. We should be able to do that for families with our houses. We are basically, corporations exist for a purpose beyond, just the people there. It exists to build a profit. Well, families exist for a purpose beyond themselves. They exist to form the next generation of citizens in the best possible way. And so I'm just all about putting more of the tax burden on corporations because they really don't pay anything. And I know that there are people that say that, individuals end up paying all taxes. That's not true. That's why they fight for all of us to pay taxes. And even just from a practical standpoint, 320 million Americans having to figure out and file their own tax returns every year is not very good. You've essentially potentially criminalized millions of Americans, even though they're trying to do the right thing. Anything we can do to simplify the tax code and put more of the burden and share more of the burden with corporations between them and families, I think is a good thing.
There's another question here. I don't know if there is time for it, Lynn. It's a quick one.
Okay, quick one, and then just finally, I'll give each of the speakers, 1 or 2 minutes to add whatever takeaway or whatever comments they want to add. So we're going to go over a little bit. I hope it's okay.
Okay, how can some of your excellent points be brought to the childless educators?
That's a great question. Yeah, actually, Nicholeen, why don't you take it? Because you're probably better.
I actually have been working on that one, so I can say that it is a concern with the childless educators. In fact, my husband has sisters that are all kind of in that category. I shouldn't say all, but some of them. And the things I've heard them say over the years, such as, well, these parents can't tell me how to raise their child. I've raised hundreds. And I'm like, whoa, we've got a problem. But what I've noticed is that there's pain. The more that we create a selfish society, there is pain everywhere in the classroom, because when you teach a child not to respect parental authority, you also teach them to respect no adult authority. And so then we have problems in the classroom. So there are a lot of schools, charter schools, private schools, even some public schools, and some teachers who have come to me with teaching self-government, and they've said, okay, we need to learn these skills. Can these be applied to a classroom? And I'm like, yeah. And I've even made whole videos on how to apply the principles of self-government into the classroom. But to help them see, but the thing is once you start learning about principles, you automatically get a bigger view. So they have a very myopic view, and they're only taught a myopic view right now in their trainings to become teachers, where they used to have a bigger view of what they were creating. Now it's all about these little details. And so once they start learning about principles to teach the children to decrease some of the pain, then what happens is they start going, wait a minute, who am I really creating? What am I really doing? And whose plan is this after all? And their eyes start opening. In fact, I've had teachers come to me and say, I can't ever see the world the same again. Just after learning these principles of communication, this self-government concept, suddenly I can't blame my students for things anymore. I now have to look at me. And so now they're starting to see things in a different way. So I think you have to really teach principle, and they're going to go looking for it when the pain gets great. That's what I think. And I think hopefully they find it in the right places. We keep coming up with programs for the pain, but those programs are not handling the pain. All of the social emotional learning programs are actually creating more social and emotional entitlement. I've been trying to expose that, over the years. But if they go right back to where that real social and emotional grounding happens in the family, then they can't deny that the children who come from good families, they do different things in the classroom. They're better. They're more adjusted.
Carrie, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, my gut instinct would be like, try and get as many of them to have kids themselves, right? I think that delaying family formation and getting married has really infantilized a lot of people. When you get married, it's the first time in your life that you're responsible for another human being in a very real way. And then when you have kids, it's like that times a million. And the chairman of my board calls it the crucible of the family, right? Because it really purifies you of as much selfishness as you're willing to give up. So that would be first and foremost. But I also think that we need to look at some government policies that can kind of put some pressure on people to get married at a younger age, like maybe a DINK tax, double income, no kids, where, instead of a marriage penalty, you get taxed extra to make up for your lack of social security contributions by not having children that are going to pay into it. Something like that, where, you're incentivized to actually get married and have kids yourself. But, I think the real problem is that we have this whole generation, we have a couple generations now that have been given participation trophies. High school education is not what it was when my father-in-law graduated, 8th grade. My father, he has an 8th grade education, but he's smarter than a lot of people with college degrees today. And so I think the problem is that a lot of these people, you try and tell them that they really don't know what they're talking about, and they're not going to be receptive to that. But I also think there's another problem that really kind of falls on the parents of America, and parents, I mean, I can't talk to the rest of the world. I can only talk about America, but in that you talk to a teacher, I have a lot of compassion for a lot of these teachers. Like they have to put up with a lot, and they don't get paid that much. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, they're doing damage. They think they know everything. They don't. And they're tools in this, they're cogs in this crazy progressive machine. But at the same time, they're there for a reason, and it's because families have not taken their jobs, parents and they haven't prioritized their children the way that they should. And again, that's all government policy. It's the interesting thing is, like, there's victims and then there are perpetrators, but even the perpetrators in a lot of cases are victims themselves of a whole system that's been designed very deliberately to encourage lack of family formation and to not have time to raise your own children. So it's very difficult, but I think the best way is to put pressure on people to get married, and you can do that through government policy in a lot of ways.
Excellent. And also thank you for reminding us that there's many good teachers out there that are doing their best, which much more difficult situation because kids don't have self-governance or self-control. We are over, but I would like to give just a final last minute to each of you to give whatever takeaway or thoughts you want to share. Nicholeen, you want to go first? Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I didn't push the button. Thank you. I think one of the things that keeps coming to me through the discussion, I'm sure Terry and I could discuss at length. We're going to have to connect outside of this. Anyway, but because I work on a lot of policy things related with, to family as well, the one thing that keeps coming to me, and this is something that I told people years ago. So I made the very unpopular decision for my own 4 children to actually homeschool them years ago. And that's not popular, especially when my dad is a lifetime public school teacher. In fact, I got a lot of flack for that anyway, at first. And then he said, whoa, Nicholeen, that was the smartest thing you could have ever done. So he changed his tune completely. But the one thing that I have always told parents is your children are born to parents. They are not born to a society. They're not born to a school. They're not born to a hospital or a doctor. They are born to their parents. And they have claim upon their parents just by the very nature of how they were created. A woman releases an egg. That's the biological term. Men release sperm. Those join together. They create a new organism. That organism owns the sperm and the egg. They have claim upon them. And so that child is born to those parents. And so we have to make sure that we are always remembering, maybe we don't know everything, because I think, in answer to one of the previous questions that was asked, a lot of parents don't do anything about the problems because they feel like they're not the expert, but guess what? Because the child is born to you, someone else already thought you were the expert. Okay, that child came to you and it didn't come to anybody else. And to me, I think that's a powerful thing to hold on to. And I know we could say, well, anybody could have a child. Yeah, but each child somehow is uniquely fitted to each of those families. And I think we empower our parents to not think they need to be the experts. They just need to be the parents. And when they are the parents, then there is power in that, in the child's life, in their life, and in the world.
Beautiful. Terry.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Nicholeen said. I really think that we have some major challenges ahead of us, but I think it's all doable. I think, as Nicholeen was talking, it really makes sense, right? We are the ones that are not just creating our children and building. If you were to build a home, an entire house, as complicated as a house is, you would have rights to that, right? You would have rights to what color the house is and what furniture goes into that house and the fixtures and everything on it. And children are so much more complicated. They're so much more difficult to do and to form than a house. And I think that it's very obvious, if you were to build something, if you were to create something, it belongs to you. Unless you relinquish that, right? If you make a piece of art, that is yours unless you sell it or give it away to someone. And I think ultimately our biggest problem is something that we've created ourselves, and that is that we've elected politicians that have passed laws that have made our lives more difficult, and we've basically sold and given away a lot of our rights to raise our children. But we can take it back, right? We still have elections in this country. We still have politicians, and the numbers growing, but we have politicians that are willing to champion a lot of these issues. And so get involved and get engaged. You can change the world. And if not, just have as many kids as you can, and then they can change the world, right? I think that I think a lot about how, I think Christians in a lot of ways have relegated their responsibility, right, by not having children. If all Christians in America had just kept having children, and just, America had a tough time adopting and embracing the birth control pill. And I'm not going to lecture people about that, but they had a hard time doing that because at the time that it was introduced, Americans were Christian, and they said, well, God's in charge of who lives and who dies, and I'm not going to play God by determining how many children I have. I'm going to let him decide that. And somehow or another, over the years, we gave that up. And I think that we can reclaim it. We just need some insurgents, some crazy people, some maniacs like myself and Nicholeen, and we can take back the world and take back our country.
Excellent. So we just have to have more children. Thank you so much. This has been really rich and rewarding, and it seems like just opening up more, more dialogue, more inquiry into how to make parents empowered, recognize them, understand, as Nicholeen said, how we need to look at the world in terms of the family and parents. And I thank you so much. Really wonderful job. Taj, you want to say a final?
Well, I'm just grateful and thankful to be part of this conversation. It's enriching, it's educating, and I hope our participants also find it so. I am mesmerized. I just again look at the artificial intelligence. There is something about the mother here I just would like to read, if you don't mind, because mothers are kind of the cradle. The artificial intelligence, the machine said, mothers with their nurturing and caring nature have traditionally been associated with the primary responsibility of raising children. Their unconditional love, emotional support, and ability to create a warm and secure environment are unparalleled. From the moment of conception, mothers provide nourishment and protection to their unborn child, fostering deep bond that continues throughout life. Mothers excel at instilling values, teaching empathy and compassion, and nurturing emotional intelligence in their children. Their intuition, patience, and selflessness create a strong foundation for the well-being of the individuals and the cohesion of families. The machine knows something.
All right, as long as it holds on to the core of parenting the family. Thank you all. We've gone way over 15 minutes. I really appreciate it. I think we just have to do this again. That's the answer.
Yes.
Thank you. God bless you.
Amen.
Keep up the good work. Insurgency. Okay, bye-bye.